It's martini time, Mom. That's right. Roger Stone's on the show today. We're going to get the lowdown skinny straight from the man himself on all things crazy corruption. Roger Stone's going to be with us. But before we get into that extended interview, I want to remind you TACPAC is the premier monthly subscription box for military, tactical, prepper, and Second Amendment enthusiasts. And just for $49.95 a month, you're going to get at least $100 worth of gear, sometimes $150, $200 worth of stuff from different companies like 511, Sons of Liberty, Gunworks, Mission First Tactical, Armaspec, and a whole lot more. They're going to send out AR-15 parts and accessories, EDC tools, knives, and gear to keep you prepared for when the stuff hits the fan, and it's splattering all over the wall right now. The June box was physically the biggest box ever, and now the upcoming July box is the heaviest. So May and June both sold out very early, so you need to sign up now to get the heavy box for July. You're going to get over $100 worth of patriotic gear, and you need to use the promo code CHAD, C-H-A-D, at checkout to receive a free extra bag of tactical goodies. That way they'll know we sent you. It's going to ship out with your first pack. So don't wait. These are flying off the shelves. Go to tacpack.com. That's T-A-C. pack.com. Sign up today, tacpack.com, and use offer code CHAD. We'll be right back with Roger Stone. Hey guys, welcome back. I know that one of the biggest things that happens these days is you get bombarded with news stories, a lot of it fake news stories, and things that come at you almost at the speed of thought, whether it is with 24-hour, 7-day-a-week news cycles or with social media. You don't know what to believe. You get confused. These days, especially with the last, ever since 2016 and the election of Donald Trump, you don't know what to believe anymore. So what I've discovered is the best thing to do is get it straight from the horse's mouth. Get it straight from the person who was actually involved in the situation. So we're going to do that. Here's a guy who's made plenty of headlines. Of course, you know who he is, but what's the story? We're going to find out. Welcome to the show, Roger Stone. Roger, look at you in that Tom Mix hat. You look fantastic, man.
Well, I heard you were a sharp dresser, and I couldn't get outdone today. I bought this when I was going back and forth to Austin when I was working at InfoWars.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to wear it. I wore it once, and Jones made so much fun of me that I never wore it again. I wore a different cowboy hat. So anyway, it's great to be with you.
I love it. I want to go have one of those things made. That's beautiful. You can't buy those off the shelf, that's for sure. I think I asked you, how many hats do you think you have?
I've been collecting hats since I was a kid, so I probably have a couple hundred hats. I bought most of them, in secondhand shops or thrift shops, or you can go online. There's a lot of hats available on eBay, used hats, obviously. Interestingly enough, my father passed away about 5 years ago now, and he lived in New York. And when they were clearing out his stuff, my mother sent all my father's hats. I had no idea that my father and I had the exact same head size. So I inherited, all kinds of great stuff: a top hat, a Homburg, a Tyrolean hat, and so on. And they have some sentimental value as well. But yeah, hats are the problem with, of course, is that you get hat hair when you got to go on TV. But other than that, I like hats.
Yeah, I saw you on a recent interview with Sean Hannity, and you weren't wearing a hat, and I thought, who is this guy? I didn't even recognize you. But I love it. I've always been a hat guy. People give me a hard time about it, but it is what it is. People have their own style, and you certainly have yours. One place you can't wear a hat, by and large, is federal prison, and that's where you were headed had it not been for this commutation. But I want to back way up, and I want to hear from you. What happened? What's the story? Why did they come after Roger Stone?
Well, I'm glad to have that opportunity because, as I think you know, Chad, I was gagged unconstitutionally for 16 months. The judge had this theory that my being able to defend myself on social media or on shows like this one would somehow taint the jury pool, which is a pretty ridiculous idea in view of the fact that the Washington Post, which is the dominant newspaper in the city from whom the jury would be selected, was tainting the jury pool every day and not in my favor, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess where this really begins is in 1988. See, in 1988 was the first point at which I realized that Donald Trump, who I had met in Ronald Reagan's campaign for president when I was assigned to handle New York State, had the capacity and the strength and the vision and the independence and courage and the stamina, in fact, to be not only a great presidential candidate, but a great president. And in 1988, our choices were George H.W. Bush and Michael Dukakis, which is an extraordinarily weak choice. And I broached the idea with Donald, which is what he told me to call him. And he looked at me and he said, "You're out of your mind. I love business. I love real estate. I love what I'm doing right now. Why in the world would I want to, jump in he didn't say swamp then, but he said, why would I want to jump in the middle of that?" And I said, "Well, you were complaining a couple of days ago about how lousy these candidates are." And he said, typical Trump, "Well, you're right. I could do a better job than any of them. And if I ran, I'd win. But I've got too much on my plate in terms of real estate and the things I want to do." But we talked about it. We continued to talk about it. We talked about it again in 2000. At that point, Ross Perot, who had run as an independent twice and got a lot of votes, and Jesse Ventura, the former wrestler, who by then was governor of Minnesota, but a good friend of Donald Trump's from his days wrestling at the Trump Plaza in Atlantic City, they were both pushing Donald Trump to run as the Reform Party candidate, third party candidate at that time. We actually made some exploratory trips around the country. He stuck his toe in the water, but he correctly determined that in this country, unfortunately, one has to either be a Democrat or a Republican to get elected president. There are too many institutional barriers, legal barriers, and so on. I wanted him to run in 2012 in the worst way because I took one look at Mitt Romney and I realized the answer to the question was Donald Trump.
Right.
Mitt Romney is about as phony an individual as I've ever seen in American politics. I mean, this guy is as phony as his hair color. He's not a conservative. If he was, he would never say, "I'm severely conservative." No conservative would ever describe themselves as severely conservative. I also thought he would lose, and of course he did. Then in 2016, it all kind of, the time met the man, the moment met the man. What I liked about Donald Trump was his incredible independence. He doesn't owe anybody. In other words, he's the first person in my lifetime that got to the White House without owing Wall Street or the insurance industry or the gas and oil industry or the banking industry or any special interest. And he's the toughest human being I've ever worked for. I worked for Richard Nixon and Bob Dole, both great patriots, both tough guys, but Donald Trump is tougher than either one of them. So I had this long relationship with Donald Trump, and then I worked initially to help set up his campaign, but then I was publishing my book, The Clintons' War on Women, which is the definitive opposition research dump on Bill and Hillary and Hillary's daughter, Chelsea. That probably put a target on my back. The book became very well thumbed through in the Trump campaign. I campaigned very hard independently of the Trump campaign, did a lot of speaking, writing, talking, and so on. Then on Inauguration Day, 2017, January 20th, there was a front page story above the fold in the New York Times. 3 Trump associates wiretapped in Russian probe, and I was named as one of the 3. I, of course, know nothing about this. To this day, the Times refuses to retract the story, and the government continues to insist they have no idea what the New York Times was talking about. That the surveillance of me doesn't start until much later. I'm not sure I believe them. By the end of 2017, we started to have this drumbeat of stories, clearly leaked by the Mueller investigation, that Roger Stone was going to be charged or was under investigation for treason, espionage, you get it exactly right, conspiracy against the United States.
So when you hear those, Rogers, when you hear those accusations, what level of I know the disbelief that's there, but what level of fear rises up in you when you hear a word like an accusation of treason?
Well, I wasn't afraid because I knew there was nothing that I had done in 2016 in my perfectly legal efforts to elect Donald Trump that could be misconstrued as treason.
Mm-hmm.
So my whole attitude was these people are on a vendetta. They have an agenda. They're not going to find evidence of any of these crimes. I didn't really see how badly this could end, but then I didn't understand how corrupt the Mueller investigation was. I didn't understand how corrupt the DC court system was. I didn't understand the extent to which I would not be able to defend myself. And I underestimated the connection between the corporately owned media and the two-party duopoly, the political establishment in this country.
Yeah.
Call it a deep state, if you will, to just silence you, to just snuff you out.
So you felt like the accusations were just totally out of left field.
I couldn't figure out what they were talking about.
Right.
Now, this is largely based on the fact that throughout the campaign, I had, after the Democratic convention, not before, but afterwards, I'd started to take an interest in what WikiLeaks was doing.
Mm-hmm.
It occurred to me that everything they had released was authentic. No one's ever questioned whether the stuff that they had obtained was real. It was all newsworthy.
Yeah.
I had no idea where they obtained it. I mean, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, they get classified information and publish it all the time. And they don't tell you their sources. And I did, to a great extent, on my Twitter feed, which was quite lively at that point. I had about, 550,000 followers. Mm-hmm. I definitely teased it. In other words, I didn't want the mainstream media to sweep it under the carpet. So I would say, this was all based on pretty much public reports. WikiLeaks disclosures coming in the future will be devastating to Hillary. Stay tuned. Nothing in there about the source or the content or the topic. A fellow I knew on radio, a guy named Randy Credico, who is kind of a mess, to say the least, a progressive radio host. But we've been friends because we both oppose the stupid, failed war on drugs, which is an expensive, ignominious, racist failure. And that was our common bond. He told me he had a source inside the legal structure for WikiLeaks, and that whatever it was that Assange said he had on the air with Anderson Cooper in June, it was big, he said. It's really big. It's going to rock the campaign. And he said it would come in October. That's what I knew. There it is right there. Mm. So I teased that throughout the year. Then after some time, we started to get this flow of stories that I was being accused of all these crimes. 19 of my friends or associates got dragged before the grand jury. Now, grand jury testimony is supposed to be a secret. Mm-hmm. But in every case, the name of the people going to the grand jury would be out in the media the day before they testified. So it's not a question of a reporter seeing them in the hallway,
Right.
So they would leak that. That led to a drumbeat by the end of 2018 that was literally now daily. Stone will be arrested any minute now. Mueller zeroes in on Stone. A new focus on Stone by Mueller, and so on. And then, of course, as I think everybody in America saw, on January 25th of 2019, at 6 o'clock in the morning, 29. Pardon me.
No, you've always got these reporters on your front lawn constantly, so I can hear the dog going crazy.
Even now, that's why the dogs are. The morning of the 29th of the 25th, about 6 o'clock in the morning, I got a call on my cell phone, and it was let's just say it was a local police officer who's a friend of mine, and he said, "Are you home?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "Well, I'm down at Starbucks, and there must be 30 FBI agents here getting coffee."
Oh, wow.
And talking to some of them. I get the impression they may be headed to your house. And I kind of already knew that was going to happen from a sloppy source at CNN who kind of let it slip. So I took a quick shower. I put on my Roger Stone Did Nothing Wrong t-shirt, and I waited. And sure enough, 29 completely SWAT-clad, assault weapon bearing FBI agents with their night goggles arrived in 17 armored vehicles. You could hear the government helicopter overhead. I lived on a canal, so these two boats pull up to the canal.
Oh,
They're
boy.
actually frogmen holding, long rifles. They surround the house. They bring this enormous battering ram up to the front door, as if I'm not going to open the door. They've got dogs, these really vicious-looking dogs on, I guess, a canine unit. And they pound on the door, screaming, FBI, will open up. So I open up, and this can all be seen, of course, thanks to CNN. They say, "Are you Roger Stone?" I say, "I am." They said, "Would you please step outside and put your hands behind your back? We have a warrant for your arrest." And I said, "Certainly, I'm happy to cooperate. I'm very anxious to see the charges." And they said, "We'll show you the charges later."
Wow.
So I was wearing no shoes, pair of cut-off gym shorts, a T-shirt. They take me out, and I stand in the middle of the street. The entire street has been roped off.
Hang on. Now, let me stop you right there, Roger. Hang on, because we got to take a quick break, and I want to make sure we give you the right amount of time for this, because everybody's interested in this, because this is what they saw and this is what they want to hear. Before we go to break, hey, listen, now that America's opening up doesn't mean that everything's okay. You still got to wash your hands. You got to do all that social distance stuff, the stuff that makes you feel good about you. Let me give you the best thing you can do. Field of Greens by Brickhouse Nutrition. Every day, 1 scoop, full serving of real USDA certified organic fruits and vegetables, which boosts energy and supports a healthy immune system. Plus, you get a diet of fruits and vegetables every day. It's going to reduce your risk of heart disease, hypertension, and a whole host of other health issues. Field of Greens, prebiotic, probiotic. It's a great source of vitamins. You need it in your nutrition, folks. Every single day I take it. Take a scoop of it. Put it in your water. Tastes great. Stir it up, drink it. 15% off your first order with offer code CHAD. If you go to brickhousechad.com, subscribe today, save an extra 10% every single month. Can't control the world, but you can control what's going on in your body. brickhousechad.com. Use promo code CHAD for 10% off. Hang tight. Right back with Roger Stone. All right, we're hanging out with Roger Stone. Roger, when we left our hero last, he was on the verge of danger. The feds were at his front door. No charges have been made. Frogmen with long rifles in the canal. This is bad news, Roger. This is bad news. CNN cameras everywhere, which is the thing that really pisses me off. I mean, that not only fascinates me, but absolutely pisses me off. That CNN's notified of everything that's going on, and now these jacklegs are down there at Starbucks getting a coffee, waiting to go to arrest outlaw Roger Stone. What happened next?
Well, they pounded on the door. They pulled me out to the street, as I say. I said, "I'd like to see my lawyer." They say, "Your lawyer will meet us at the FBI processing center." I said, "I'd still like to see the charges against me." They said, "We'll show them to you in the car on the way there." I said, "Fine." But I now know, by looking at the security camera footage, that CNN showed up at the house exactly 14 minutes ahead of the FBI.
Insane.
So the idea that they were there on a hunch or good investigative reporting is nonsense. But here's the proof. A reporter with CNN, whose name is Sarah Murray, a particularly duplicitous woman, contacted one of my lawyers and said, your client has just been arrested. This is about 7 a.m. And he had no idea. And she emailed him a copy of my indictment. But my indictment was sealed. It was a sealed federal document until 9:30 in the morning. And the copy she emailed him had no court markings, no pacer markings, no timestamp. But it did have the metadata tags on it that show it was written by Andrew Weissman, who was de facto head of the Mueller investigation. Now, the reason this is important, Chad, is because tipping someone as to the execution of a search warrant is a felony. And in my case, they not only had an arrest warrant for me, but they also had a search warrant for the premises. And for the next 13 hours, after they humiliated my wife by dragging her out in the street in her night clothing and her bare feet, and she, by the way, is deaf, so she woke up looking down the barrel of 2 guns.
Oh, God.
Doesn't know if it's a home invasion or what's going on. Then they ripped through the house for the next 13 hours. And, of course, we both know what they found. Nothing. That's what they found. So I then went to the FBI booking center. I was fingerprinted. My picture was taken. Everybody was very professional. They brought me something to eat. I have no argument with the individual FBI agents. In fact, it's interesting. At the house, when they let me go in and get a toothbrush and a few other things, the agents who were Miami-based would look at me and roll their eyes, or they'd look at me and wink. Mm-hmm. It was only the guys working directly under Mueller who thought that this was a crucial mission. Now, I was being arrested for the first time. I have no previous criminal record,
right?
Not even a speeding ticket. They were arresting me for the nonviolent, white-collar process crime of lying to Congress. When I looked at the charges, I said, "You've got to be kidding! This is it!" And of course, it was. I consulted with my lawyers. At that point, the government said, "We're not. Why did you arrest my client this way?" Well, he's a flight risk. But when we got to the courthouse 3 hours later for arraignment, they didn't ask for any cash bond. They let me out on my signature, proving that I was never a flight risk at all. They know I had no valid passport. I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment, but I don't own a gun. Where was I going to go? I mean, I'm pretty recognizable. So this was all for the purposes of making me look like a villain for the American people.
Sure.
They took me to the federal courthouse in Fort Lauderdale. They put me in a holding cell with 3 African-American gentlemen. We were in there for about an hour. They were just sobering up. But I do guarantee you, by the time I left the cell, all 3 of them were strong supporters of Donald Trump. Then they put shackles on your legs and your hands, and they take you out in the courtroom where the jackals in the media are standing around for you to be arraigned. I stood up and said, "Not guilty," in a loud voice. The judge ordered me released without bond. I had to sign some documents, and then I had to go to a holding area. By that time, without exaggeration, there were probably, I don't know, somewhere near 1,000 people outside the courthouse, both supporters and left-wing hippie scum types who hate America. And it was quite a scene. And I'd already decided that when I went outside, there were microphones set up, but I doubted you could hear anything over the shouting of everybody, supporters and detractors. So as you know, I came out of the courthouse and I needed to show the people that I was not guilty and that my spirit had not been broken by this Gestapo type raid on my home. So I, of course, gave the famous, Nixon's.
Sure he did. Yeah.
Yeah, that drove the judge in my case completely insane, by the way.
And anybody that knows Roger Stone knows that you are a Nixon file. I mean, I can see the paraphernalia and the stuff behind you.
Yeah, well, he was a very great president. I mean, he gave us, he gave us peace. He ended the war in Vietnam. He ended the military draft. He opened the door to China. He negotiated a strategic arms limitation with the Soviets. He desegregated the public schools without incident. He saved the state of Israel in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. He launched the war on cancer. He also made some big mistakes. The war on drugs, his biggest mistake. But don't get me started on that. So in any event, what I didn't know was how completely controlled and rigged my trial would be.
Right.
So shortly thereafter, the government starts making these motions and the judge starts granting them. Example, Stone cannot argue that he's being selectively prosecuted. He cannot argue that Comer, Clapper, Brennan, Strzok, Page, Mueller himself, or Hillary for that matter, Hooman Abbott, they've all lied to Congress. They've lied about material things. They've lied to cover up underlying crimes. I was not allowed to make that argument.
Yeah.
The first 5 pages of my indictment say that the Russians hacked the DNC, gave the information to WikiLeaks. I don't think so. I wanted to call expert witnesses and produce actual forensic evidence to disprove that. No, I was prohibited from raising that. And then the most outrageous one of all. Stone is not allowed to raise misconduct by the special counsel's office, the FBI, the Department of Justice, or any member of Congress in his defense. Now, why would you ask for that if there was no misconduct that you knew of?
Right.
You wouldn't. By the way, it's also unconstitutional under a decision called Kiles v. Whitley that holds that the investigation, indictment, and prosecution of any defendant is always subject to question as a reasonable defense.
Right.
So, this was like going into a boxing match with both hands tied behind your back and then having the guy from CNN on the sideline saying, Stone never landed a punch.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I think most Americans know that I had a D.C. jury that included not a single Republican, not a single military veteran, not a single independent, not a single blue-collar worker, not a single union member. The majority of the people had post-college educations, 3 or 4 lawyers, all of whom had worked for either the Obama or the Clinton administration, number of Democratic Party activists, people who worked at left-wing think tanks. I mean, this could have been the Obama-Clinton administration alumni reunion.
Yeah.
And they were, you could see the hostility in their face. We therefore went to trial with a real limitation in what we could do. The judge would actually, when my lawyers were speaking, the judge would look at the jury and roll her eyes and make faces. I mean, it was just beyond anything you can believe. And in the end, it became very clear to me that the die was cast. That, as my friend Tucker Carlson said, Roger Stone's trial was over before it began.
So let me ask you this. At what point in time, because I know you've alluded to this, at what point in time did Mueller know that he had a dud of a case compared to when they went after you?
Well, I think he knew he had no case when they began their investigation into me, and this explains why we went through this. Shortly before the Mueller investigation report was published, one of the prosecutors, Jeannie Rhee, who interestingly enough represented Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation in the missing email case, a clear conflict of interest, approached my attorneys and said that if I would cooperate with the investigation, if I would come clean, if I would confess, if I would confirm that a number of phone calls between candidate Trump and myself in 2016 had been about coordinating with the Russians and WikiLeaks, well, they dangled some unspecified leniency in my sentencing.
Yeah,
that's what this was really about, because they had nothing. They wanted me to be the ham in their ham sandwich. They would have used this as an article of impeachment against the president, because remember, the president said in sworn written answers to Robert Mueller that he and I never spoke about WikiLeaks. That was the truth then. It's still the truth today, even though Jerry Nadler and Schiff and the rest of these Schiff heads are out saying it's not. But that is the fact. They didn't indict me for that. I said it under oath. So they clearly have no proof of it. And it never came up again. That's what this was really about. They knew that I had a relationship with the president of 40 years. I have great affection for him and his family. I've thought for a long time he ought to run for president. I was very happy when he did. I think he's the only thing that stands between us and the country going over the cliff to globalism. So
hang on, Roger. Let me interrupt you right there, because we got about 60 seconds. If you got a few more minutes, you can hang with us.
Yes.
Because I got a couple of more questions I want to ask you, and I think they're pertinent to the situation and so relevant. But just in the next 25, 30 seconds, let me ask you this before we go further with that story. Why do they hate Donald Trump so much? I mean, what is, at the end of the day, I know the stuff on the surface, why do they hate him so much?
Because he cannot be controlled.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't owe anybody. He can't be bullied. He can't be bossed. He can't be controlled. He's his own man. And in his mind, he only answers to the American people. He doesn't answer to anybody else. And he's entirely independent. What you see is what you get. Mm-hmm. I like to say the only thing predictable about Donald Trump is he's completely unpredictable.
Yeah.
And that's what they hate. He doesn't belong to their neocon globalist club. And therefore, they're afraid that he's going to change all of those policies that have brought this country to its knees. And he's halfway there.
He's doing it. We're sitting here with Roger Stone. The only thing I wish was different is if you and I were together having a martini. Y'all hang tight. We'll be right back with Roger. I saw an awesome video of Roger Stone on Instagram just last week where he turned around at the bar and he said, "Oh, you caught me. I'm drinking Russian vodka. Do you want to come arrest me, Mueller?" That was fantastic. I wish we were having a Stoli right now, Roger.
Well, that they used to say that didn't age well, but then it turns out that it did age well.
It did age pretty well. I love it. What is your? There's two big questions I want to ask you. One I asked you in the last segment about Donald Trump. This one, when you go through a situation like this, where does your faith lie now in the constitutional system? I mean, it just seems like right now, especially if you align yourself in any way with Donald Trump, you are guilty until proven innocent, and I don't even think you're ever innocent, even with a commutation, even with an acquittal, even with any of that stuff. They wanted you to plead guilty. But I don't think, even if you had done that, right? I mean, you'd have probably been worse off. You stood by your convictions.
They would have double-crossed me anyway on sentencing, as they did Michael Cohen.
Mm-hmm.
And think about that. If you went out there and lied, the Trump supporters would hate you. The patriots would hate you. The left would still hate you. Who would like you?
Mm-hmm.
Just speaking of it politically. And then there's a larger question of the lie couldn't be sustained because it's just not true.
Yeah.
So I didn't think twice about it. I got into politics not because I loved bumper stickers. I got into politics because I believed in certain things. And I've had the luxury of being able to vote for, work for candidates and causes that I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe deeply that this president absolutely has to get reelected. They're going to run the dirtiest and most rigged campaign in American history against him because he completely threatens the status quo. But it was not just that they railroaded me in a Soviet-style show trial in Washington, D.C. It's not just that we found out after the trial that the jury forewoman, through all of 2019, the year before my trial, had been attacking me by name on Facebook and Twitter, had been attacking the president on Facebook and Twitter, had those on a private setting during jury selection and the trial, and then deleted them after the trial. Now, the Supreme Court's really clear. You're entitled to a impartial and indifferent jury. There's nothing indifferent about this woman. She hated my guts. She was a Democratic Party activist. She was a protege of Donna Brazil. She ran for Congress as a Democrat. Under any circumstances, my conviction should have been vacated and I should have been given a new trial. But the deep state just does what they want. The law doesn't really matter much, nor, as we have learned, does the Constitution. So we have a problem that continues. We have this issue of ruling elites. About 3 weeks ago, I learned that the current Department of Justice and U.S. Bureau of Prisons policy says that those convicted of nonviolent crimes, or those in prison already, or those about to go to prison, should be transferred to home confinement to protect them from COVID-19. That rule applies to Michael Avenatti, the Democrat super lawyer. It did apply to Michael Cohen until he was so dumb that he went out and violated his probation rules. And Rick Gates, who testified against me, Paul Manafort's ex-bag man, who's a very strong guy, by the way, because those bags were really heavy. Those guys are all protected from COVID-19.
Yeah.
And we filed an emergency motion with the court because the Bureau of Prisons was telling me to surrender at a prison in Georgia, where the government said there were no cases of coronavirus, but the prison guards union vigorously denied that and said that there were a substantial number of cases. There was no masks in use, no hand washing, and so on. So based on the law, the precedent, because in the entire country, for the last 30 days, anybody in my situation who's gone to court to protect themselves from being exposed to coronavirus has either been released just to time served or moved to home confinement in the entire country. That's the legal precedent.
And to be clear, did I hear correctly? You're asthmatic, right?
That is true. I'm 67. I know I don't look like it.
You look great.
I almost died of asthma as a child. I've had a problem with my whole life. But So all the legal precedents would indicate that I should go to home confinement. The current rules of the Bureau of Prisons and the DOJ indicate I should go home confinement. The current conditions in the prison, today there's 113 confirmed cases, maybe higher. That number is a couple of days old. And on top of that, you have the question of my health. The judge, of course, the bar administration at that point, to their credit, did not oppose our motion, but the judge ruled against us. Mm-hmm. So we immediately appealed it to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and roughly 20 minutes before Donald Trump signed my commutation, they ruled against me 3-0.
Yeah, this is an assassination attempt. I mean, this is, at the end of the day, that's got that feel to it.
Yeah, it was a death sentence. So here's the point, though. Had I gone to this prison in Georgia, I would never have lived long enough to pursue my appeal.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm appealing. I have two separate appeals of my conviction, one on the basis of the juror misconduct, one on the basis of a number of constitutional issues. And that appeal is going to be very revelatory. We're going to find out a lot of things the American people don't know. Mm-hmm. So if Stone could conveniently die in a federal prison between now and then, that would be terrific. And they had this wired. I mean, in all honesty, this was a deep state death sentence. Judge Jackson, in effect, gave me the death penalty. So in a humanitarian act of mercy, if nothing else, the president stepped in and said, why is Stone being treated unlike everybody else? This took a lot of courage in an election year. I know there's a lot of people around him probably told him not to do it. But he knew I didn't get a fair trial based on the conduct of the judge, the jurors, the jury forewoman, and a lot of misconduct by the prosecutors, which I'm prohibited from discussing. So on the basis of an unfair trial and on the basis of the immediate threat to my health, he did not pardon me. He commuted my sentence, which means I'm entitled to appeal. And that's what I'm working on right now. But appeal takes a year, maybe longer, and another $1 million. So, back around January, I'd hit rock bottom on this whole thing. I was upset. I was angry. I was frustrated. I was worried about who's going to take care of my wife if I was unfairly incarcerated. And ultimately, I had a great meeting with Franklin Graham, who's a very powerful speaker, the son of the great Billy Graham. And he gave me really solid advice. He told me, look, you can't, nobody can take what you're being subjected to. I've lost my home, my car, my ability to make a living, my voice, my insurance, my savings. I mean, I have a cowboy hat on my head and a bunch of used books. That's about it. And he said, you got to put this in the hands of God. You've got to be reborn. You've got to reaffirm your faith in Jesus Christ. And mark my words, he said, God will not abandon you. He will protect you from your persecutors. He will deliver you. He will stand with you, but you got to get right with God. And I was born Catholic. I'm still a Catholic. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in the birth and the death and the resurrection of God. But I admit I'd fallen away and I'd never been a particularly religious person. But I followed Reverend Graham's advice. That was a Saturday. Monday morning, the story about the crooked jury forewoman hit every front page in the country. And I didn't put it out there. I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
So, how did I get through this? I'll tell you, through the grace of God. That's the only thing that got me through this. And I think he still protects me because they're still at it. Yeah. You got a dozen of these fuzzy-headed left-wing law professors who pop up out of nowhere and say, oh, Stone's commutation by Trump was flawed because Stone is covering up for Trump, and they made it. None of that is true. There's no evidence to support that wacky left-wing conspiracy theory. But they'll never give up because I'm a truth teller. I mean, I wrote the definitive book on the Clintons. I wrote the definitive book on the Bushes, the Bush crime family. I wrote a book on the Kennedy assassination, the man who killed Kennedy, the case against LBJ. I wrote the definitive book on Watergate, which is nothing compared to what you think it's about.
Right.
So I've embarrassed the deep state too many times. And then the ultimate insult, I supported an insurgent, an outsider, a reform-minded guy who's tough as nails and has the agenda that scares the daylights out of them.
Yeah.
He wants to bring our troops home from these expensive foreign wars where we have no interest. As you know, the munitions business, the defense contractors, they make big money on war, big money.
Sure.
He threatens that. They said that no one could revive the economy, that it was structurally impossible. And he got us through a combination of tax cuts and regulatory cuts and renegotiating the trade deals. He got us the strongest, most robust economy in our history. Now, because he had no choice but to protect the public health, and he had to err on the side of caution because he's not a scientist, but he has the scientists giving him what they believe are realistic projections, he had no choice but to tank our economy to save lives. And he did that. So the economy now is in terrible shape.
Right.
It's the question on the table for 2020. Who do you want to rebuild the economy? A man who's already proven that he knows exactly how to do it and has already done it once, and interestingly, whose policies on taxes and regulation are already bringing the economy back. Look at these last two jobs reports in the face of a pandemic. Or do you want a guy who, A, doesn't know what day of the week it is, B, doesn't know who he is, doesn't know his last name, and more importantly, his prescription for the sick patient, higher taxes, more regulation, more big one-size-fits-all trade deals, will kill the patient.
Yeah.
That's the question on the table. That's what this campaign needs to be about.
I hear you. Roger Stone, I want you to come back and spend more time with us. We could have a lot of fun together. I really appreciate the time. And you know what? I appreciate the point you made. God's in control, and we're praying for you. We support Roger Stone and encourage folks that are watching and listening, pray for Roger as well. You're going through a lot. You've been through a lot, and you got a road ahead of you. So we're praying for you, pal. Thanks, man. We appreciate you, Roger.
Thank you very much. I've got at least 3 more cowboy hats, so I definitely have.
Well, we'll go through all of them, man. We'll go through all of them. Roger Stone, everybody. Thank you, buddy. We got to get Roger back. I want to have him in studio, though. What a character he is. Everybody knows that he is. But you know what? I love people like that because they tend to tell you what you need to hear. They don't hide things. It's kind of gotten me in trouble myself. So, yeah, stay tuned because there's going to be a lot more to this story. I'm afraid to say that they're not done with Roger Stone yet. They're going to continue to vilify him in a big, big way. And we're going to continue to speak out for him because you know what? It doesn't matter. They always go after the bigger personalities. They just do. And that's what's going to happen because at the end of the day, it makes them more money. It sells more news and more advertising. So there you go. There's a lot going on there. It's also why they go after a flamboyant character by the name of Donald Trump. I want everybody to go to watchchad.com. Get your tickets for this weekend. Come hang out with us Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night in Oklahoma City at the Bricktown Comedy Club. We're going to be there all 3 nights. We're there on Sunday too, Steve? I think we are. Yeah, we got 6 shows total over the weekend. So come out there and hang with us. Get the information at watchchad.com. Also, going to be down in Tomball, Texas for one night only, August 1st. And then we're going to be where I can see Natalie's hands coming out on the camera continually. And then we're going to be in Salt Lake City that first weekend, the first full weekend in August. So go to watchchad.com and get your tickets. Come hang out with us. All kind of new dates are going to be announced. You know why? Because we ain't scared. So go to blazetv.com/Chad as well. Get your annual subscription to the Blaze. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends about it. Leave us a rating and review. We love you. God bless. Talk to you next time. Bye.